I apologize.
Meeting is called to order. The meeting minutes are approved. It's August 29th, 6 o'clock.
Liz, do you want me to recount the minutes
It was
briefly for
6:30.
those?
No, come on.
Oh, no,
I think we're fine. I think there's minutes. I think we're fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I
Thank
will-
you, Liz. I
Yeah, good
appreciate
reminder.
it.
No problem.
I will paste into our chat here, and I'll
Okay.
submit with the minutes some documents that I'll paste in hyperlinks to descriptions of natural communities that our Mass Wildlife Agency and Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program maintain and produce
Nice.
for what I would foresee would describe the wetland that would emerge there. Shallow marsh, deep marsh, shrub swamp, and wet meadow.
Mhm.
Does it define, Jeff, the depths of each one? Like when you say deep marsh, does it say 3 feet or I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, great.
You'll see these, these conditions occur in, 6 inches to 2
Yeah,
feet of water,
awesome.
these to da da da. But then you'll see in each of these, this natural community intergrades with and is hard to distinguish from everything else.
Yeah, of course.
So
Mm.
it's all dependent on the microtopography and the
Sure.
the conditions. But it lists, many of the native plant species that will occur, and these natural community descriptions do focus on plant species.
Mhm.
They have a section that says here are some common animals that occur in these settings. Also, it lists threats, which include wetland destruction, and in all of them they'll mention invasives. So we're all aware that's a concern. So while I jot minutes, I'll try to paste those
Okay.
in because I have some of those pages open.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
And then in terms of the recreational opportunities, we've sort of defined those in the schemes. Is that right? That's not really a question, or is it still a question? What can we do? What are the recreational opportunities we can have? Or
I think
that's
you're
a-
defined. I don't
Okay.
think that's something we really need to.
So then my question would be, in order to achieve the recreational opportunities shown on each of the schemes, what is the permitting path? Because some of them are build a bridge, in a wetlands, put a boardwalk on a wetlands, whatever, buffer zone.
That
So
feels
just
like some preliminary research we should be able to do, or do
I
you
think Delia and her office should be able to give us that, like, what are the permits required for each of these
Mhm.
scenarios, and what's the approximate cost? We don't need it down to the penny, but is it 100, 1,000, 10,000? What is it here?
Okay. And so, so for that, we need to truly think through, like you said, okay, bridge, is that something?
Right.
Like, now I can't.
Yep.
A dock, is that something?
Boardwalk in a buffer zone, dock in the new wetland zone. I don't know, whatever, I'm making things up kind of. I'm trying to figure out, I remember what we put in here, but so all of them were within some sort of buffer zone.
Yeah. Does anyone feel like putting together that list of, like, here are the things that we need to ask about for
Schemes.
for permit? Yeah, like here's a list of different things that we might need information about permitting on. And that's so that we can then send it to kind of Delia to get a preliminary look at it.
I think if we just give a few examples, I think permitting on a bridge is completely different than permitting on a kind of a pathway through wetlands.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
or extending the boat launch. I think these are simpler permitting or simpler questions than
Great.
what is the effort to have a bridge going over something.
That makes sense.
I'll just mention again because it's good for all of us to know that I know from involvement in a couple other projects that Delia is familiar with, and the NRC has been supportive of boardwalks and raised boardwalks, like a bridge type thing here in Concord in different places. At Newberry Court, some folks that I used to work with are involved in currently building a boardwalk that runs adjacent to a nearby wetland out there, and it's a kind of a low impact slightly raised boardwalk style. You may be able to visit it. There's a similar boardwalk down in Sudbury at the Fish and Wildlife Service Weir Hill property down there, and there's been group that's been interested for several years in creating a connection from the Thoreau birthplace up near the Gaining Ground farm. You guys all know that. Down to the Battle Road.
Wow.
And that's divided by a tributary to the Shawshene River. I forget what that's called there.
Yeah.
But folks are interested in kind of getting over about 100 feet of something similar to that southwest corner of this Warner's Pond wetland. And that project has been progressing, I understand. It's just like kind of hung up on funding, but I think that the NRC has been supportive of permitting that.
Great.
I have a
some-
question. Sorry. Go ahead, Liz.
I was gonna look through to make sure we have covered off all the open questions we had last time. The only open ones I still see are, would swimming be safe / what is the water quality? And do we need to think about stormwater runoff? I think we had a discussion, actually, that we may have discussed it. We had a discussion at the big meeting, right, about stormwater runoff and how that's an everyone problem, not just a
Yes,
dam
that's right.
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a MassDOT problem.
Yeah,
So the moment the MassDOT touches the rotary, that goes away most likely. But until they're touching it, not.
Yeah. I just had
Um,
a question about Giroux Park, and in our variant 1, we've outlined quite a number of things that we would like to see done with Giroux Park, like a beach and a dock and whatever. Given what we heard at the last meeting, do we think that that is something that we should include in our budgeting and costing? Or is it something that is going to happen regardless of what we do, and it's the Department of Recreation or whatever that is going to be addressing it? Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Malcolm. I think something's gonna happen at Giroux. I think it's good for us to say what kind of tie we would see between our deep water area or a boardwalk or a dock. It can move around in Giroux, it can get paid for other ways, but I think it's important for us to say, if we have this configuration and this scheme, we would want, let's just say from the pond side, to access Giroux, right?
Mhm.
We'd say, we
Most
want this
definitely.
stream to have access to Giroux with a skating
Mhm.
bench or whatever it's gonna be.
Yeah.
I agree. Is we have to listen. The last thing you want is that someone is thinking, okay, when you take them down, you don't need to do anything anymore at Giroux Park. So we have to envision in the different scenarios is how is Giroux Park and crucial
Most
part of it.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it needs to be there. So that's the other question I think we had several times open, that's always coming and then not getting postponed is what happens again, clarification on where do the property lines end after the water recedes.
Right.
I feel like we had an answer to that at the end, like we had a plan of attack for that like,
yeah,
if we something that, I think that.
but it belongs on a list of questions.
Yeah.
And the plan of attack was a little bit postponed, but I think in any of the scenarios we need to know
Agreed.
where do the different properties end, and at least it needs to be double checked. Yeah, so far we have a statement that it should be the line where the water is today, but we also heard rumors that there are deeds out there that they might be formulated differently. So
that was covered at the last large group meeting.
Yeah,
not really. It was brought up and then kicked.
It was kicked down the road. Yeah.
I think what we said is if
What you
it
said.
ends up that the dam is being removed.
That's what you said, not we.
No, but Delia agreed. I mean,
Yeah, I think
the
this
task
was-
the task force, let me just correct, the task force agreed to put, Sen, let me just finish this one sentence if I could. the task force agreed to push this off until a point where we are actually agreeing that we're removing the dam and we need to solve this problem. That we're
It's
not
the
going to
task
spend,
force in
that
our
we are not going
presentation.
to spend $25,000 or $30,000
The
on a
task force
lawyer
in the
to draw
breakout
these
session
lines. for
said
us
we are
yet.
bringing that question up.
Yeah.
And then you voiced a different opinion in the joint group again. And I was not pushing further, but I just want to have that on the list that we know it. Yeah. But
Yeah.
we can't say we.
Agreed.
I think we know it's a cost we have to account for when we get to the cost part, and
That's
I
right.
think
That's
I
right.
think what it was is it's not something that we should be doing right now because we're
Yeah.
not. And I don't necessarily, Vicky, think that it's like we as a task force have agreed that. I don't think it's necessarily going to only be if that we decide the dam is going to be removed. Like I think there might, I can envision a scenario in which we're sort of like, we might need to know this before we make a decision. But I think we just have to, it is something that we should keep on having on our radar, keep on having the approximate cost on our radar when we're thinking about the
Yeah.
whole thing. Because I do agree with right now does not seem like a great time. No, it's not holding us up in the same way that, now I can't, whatever it was at the dredging group, I can't remember, was being held up.
Yeah, they wanted to know how many cubic yards could be located in certain areas so they could figure out if they
That's
could
right.
dredge on
Which,
site.
by the way, is a question we also should have on the list, because if on that option where we want to dredge a little bit to make the big hole a little bit larger,
Mhm.
we need to know how much of the dredging material can be stored
Yeah.
cheaply. Yeah.
So they're
So
gonna come up with
that's
that
also
answer,
a
it
question
sounds
on the
like, yeah.
list, but only for that scenario where we would dredge a little bit.
But it sounds like they're gonna come up with that answer. We're gonna get up with a number. Within hose,
Yeah, but we have to have it on our running list as a question.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have this group of questions around channel flow, sediment flow, width and depths
yeah,
that we need to go back to NRC and say kind of like, who do we need to talk to get a more clarity on this? Is there someone who can model this for us? Is that in a more concrete way? Obviously, nature's nature, it's going to do its thing, but
yeah,
and then separately we have this kind of group of questions around what are the edges going to look like, what are the plant communities that are going to emerge, and then sort of along with that, what invasives are apt to go in these different plant communities, and what is the kind of proactive management plan we need to kind of account for.
yeah, like
Day
one, and what's the ongoing maintenance of that?
Yeah.
Plant?
Does that feel like, yes, yeah, so both proactive and then anything
And then,
ongoing, yeah.
and then the fish.
And then, yes, and then the group of questions around the fish. I feel like I think we certainly have other questions. Swimming, permitting costs, property lines, but I feel like those three are the three kind of clusters of questions that we need direction on how to figure out in order to have the proposal that Toby is looking for. Does that seem right to you
Maybe,
guys?
I mean, maybe, I think we have to figure out what this final proposal is supposed to actually look like, because I don't have a really good feel for it yet. Like, how much of this do we actually have to have figured out all the way through before we make a proposal? We need to hear that through with all of the groups. Like, are all of the groups figuring this out all the way through? I don't know yet.
I think that the best way is to look at the criteria set we have to measure.
Yep.
And see what do we need to have in place against these set of criteria.
Yeah.
To answer them. And I think that would be one of our next exercises, to go through and have this list of criteria, go through at least what we know today and what the options are, the scenarios we have in mind today, and go through each of the criteria and say, can we answer this? If yes, what? And if not, what is holding us back?
be a good exercise, Sven.
I don't feel like we have, so we never, this is kind of going, on. We never really, no one responded to Toby's email about whether or not we feel like we'd have kind of this formal proposal to send
Well,
out.
But I think at the last meeting, we said we're far enough along to at least present what we have. We
So
have
I
three
feel like
direct-
I think what we really, I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off.
Oh, yeah, you froze. So sorry, Liz, you kind of froze.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, my internet I don't know how I'm like in my wife's office. I don't understand how she works here because every time I'm out here, I have like unstable internet. So Vicky, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What was I saying? What were you
Yeah,
saying?
I think we had a more loose opinion on what we present than what Toby is coming back with. If you present,
Right.
this is kind of formal framework we have
Yeah.
to answer. We are not ready for the formal
No,
framework.
Okay.
but we didn't
So
say
I-
we
But I
were.
think the
sending
idea
that.
that Vicky and others had was just getting a kind of a high level feedback from the
Yeah.
group
Okay, so
about what we were
Like,
thinking.
why not? We're not making our final proposals. I feel like keeping it away from the rest of the group is a little weird. I mean, I would like to hear from the other groups too. Where are they headed so far? What can we learn from each other? We're supposed to be one task force. We just split up so that we could do a little diving into stuff. But it feels like we all need to understand what's happening in these other groups. And so my proposal, and if we're still okay with it, is that we present our loosely defined 3 directions and get feedback from the bigger task force. Because at the end of the day, it's the task force that has to submit 1, 2, or 3 of these schemes as recommendations. It's not up to this subgroup, right?
right.
Would
So
you-
I think maybe I can respond to Toby on behalf of the group if it's okay with everyone and just say, like, we are not like at a formal proposal level in the way that I think he does, but we do want to have time to kind of have a high level discussion with everyone about our 3 kind of ideas that we're pursuing to see if, if there's something we should just knock off, not pursue it. And get a sense that, does that feel like a fair, because in his email, he also said they were talking about setting aside extra time for us because to present these 3 things. So I don't want there to be like, I don't know, 2 hours or
I hope
whatever.
it didn't sound like that when we talked about it with the
Yeah,
group.
I don't think we did. But so I can, if that's okay with you guys, that's essentially the email I can send to Toby, if that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I felt like that was a loose end that,
Yeah, no, I looked at his email and oh.
I know, it's like, that's like 3 months from now.
But I still think, to what I said before, that we reach a point where we should go in this group through the exercise.
Yeah.
I agree.
And just see where do we need to do more work and digging.
Yeah, and I think that will expose some things for like, oh, we hadn't thought about this, like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Maybe that's our next group agenda after we go back to the main group.
Yeah, I think if we have like breakout time in
Yeah,
the
true,
next
true.
meeting, we can start working through that, I feel like.
I think the breakout time is super short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just 30 minutes and you're moving from one room to the other. And
I know.
I do think they said they anticipated it being longer. It was part of it was short was because we had the presentation about Giro. But I think Karen sent the agenda, but
I'm more in Vicky's camp. I'm more curious, like, to hear where generally everyone is.
I agree.
Than just cooking in our own pot again when
I
we are all
know.
together. We just lost opportunity to share information.
I agree. And then the other thing, I'm sorry, going back to the permits, there was a point somebody made along the way about, I think it was maybe Keith had brought up permits that we need at the end of these things. It was something weird about
It was
Beaver
redoing the
maps or GIS or I don't know, something we need to clear up. Who pays for those things? Because I did look it up. It looks like some places they do mention that, another dam removal project. So I think we should just put that onto the list of, is that part of our cost or not? Maybe it's not.
And I
Yeah,
don't-
what I've read is that in a situation like ours, the footprint of the pond would be considered to be the flood plain, the flood area,
Yeah.
and it would not require a separate survey in that situation. But it would be good to have someone actually confirm that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to get caught on some of these things.
One thing that Sven reminded me that one thing I've been meaning to do is go back through the criteria and ask myself that question: what do I feel like I can't answer? And one is around visual assessment, because visual appeal is highly subjective. But I have come across, and haven't done as much homework as I had intended, these visual assessment templates or rubrics that we might apply. So that's a question I have for myself, I have for the group, or for the
Yeah, that's a
larger
good point.
group. Because if we have that as a criterion, it's hard to make that objective, right? You could just say,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
some people like that, some people like that.
Yeah, no, that's right. We also said from the very beginning, we're going to be tied to those criteria. So I think
Yeah.
that's right.
So I'll be looking for a question, if anybody's familiar with, visual, aesthetic appeal survey or something like that, a mechanism that landscape architects might use or something.
Yep. Yeah. Although I'm looking at a 30% dam removal report for Ypsilanti, Michigan from AECOM. And it has a ton of information about what's going to be left over. The bathymetry, the edge conditions, the water flow in, water flow out, the depths, summer, winter. I mean, I don't know how many pages this report is. Let's just see. It's 40 pages long. So I'm hoping, since this is also a 30% dam removal report, that this basis of design report will be something like that, and we'll get some of this stuff answered.
That would be useful.
I'm sorry, my internet, I didn't hear where I just heard, it was something you found online?
Yeah, it's I looked up 30% dam removal report, and I found one from Ypsilanti, Michigan, the Huron River watershed.
Okay,
And
cool.
so hopefully we'll have 40 pages of similar answers.
Great. Okay. Do we think we're kind of through the open questions, understanding where we are, how we're going to group them, what our next steps on them are going to be?
So next steps, can you just say what you think we are, next steps?
Well, so I think that what we need is help identifying who we need to talk to kind of
Right.
attack these three larger questions. I think Toby said that a fish passage person was coming. They would be having one. I don't know if there's a set list if we want to try to come up with a list of specific questions that we think are applicable. I think we have, a general question around fish passage. But are there
Well,
some?
they're very specific. It's like, what fish are we attracting when we remove the dam? Like, what kind of fish are going to pass through here? What happens with the depths that we, in when the dam is removed, if it's 5 feet, 3 feet, whatever it is, what fish do we expect at the high and the low in each scenario?
Okay.
Be able to pass through
Yeah, I guess
this stream. Because a lot of the discussion at the
so
very
yes,
beginning
whenever
was
they
about
come,
doing this for the
kind of
sake of
making sure we're
fish
getting the
passage.
answer.
Like, we're gonna do this so that fish can get through here. So are we solving that problem when we remove the dam?
It's fish passage is one thing, but also what does the seasonal and year-round fish population look like? I think that's pretty important. It's obviously going to be quite different because right now the pond is mostly warm water species, sunfish,
Pickerel, bass.
it's the largemouth bass, the pickerel. If it's a stream, we will probably keep the sunfish. We'll quite possibly keep the largemouth. I'm not sure that we'll keep the pickerel. Obviously the other smaller fish, I know there's, maybe you know better, Jeff, but I think I read there's 17 different species within the watershed that some of them are quite small, but will we affect that? And then obviously there's the effect on diadromous fish. Yeah. Someone was talking to me about the impact on eels and how that will be very exciting, that there'll be eels
Oh, Liz,
back in.
get ready, Liz. She's so
And I
excited.
hadn't even thought about eels particularly.
exciting. It's
Liz
bad enough having
has.
black
She's-
dogs.
She's seen them already at her house, so
Oh,
she-
really?
she's
Oh, no,
so excited about adding to the population.
Those water sneaky things.
Yeah,
They're all there. I can't
those
pull
are
my back
eels,
door.
Liz. Those are the eels.
Oh, I'm just thinking
Well,
about-
We do have water snakes too.
You
right?
do
Yeah,
have a
we do.
lot of
Those
water
are-
snakes down by your house. Yes.
that's what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Um,
Oh, God.
so
That'd be
if
further
we
away
get
from my
on
house.
to potential speakers here, we have the fisheries expert. I know I've expressed individually that request earlier. So
Definitely, yeah.
if at the last meeting, Toby said that person is on the way, that's great. That'll meet
Yep.
some of our needs. Other experts we're looking to.
So trying to figure out what kind of expert we would want to talk to figure out how to figure out depths, widths,
The channel,
Mm.
I'm frozen again, aren't I? Damn it.
location.
No, you came through, Liz. Yeah, so that's. I guess we've kind of asked those questions of Alex Patterson. Is it Alex Patterson from EA?
Yeah, he's the EA guy.
But he
EA
keeps
guy.
coming back with, we're not sure yet. We don't really know how, he hasn't been able to answer those questions over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it is just really that you can't answer them. And
I think
You
it's
know, to-
less
I
that
think
he
Anna's
can't
suggestion
answer them. I think he's
last
unwilling
week
to answer
about
them.
draining, and then you get a sense.
I don't know, Dan Stapleton has been willing to do the math and figure that out from his engineering mind. He's like, he's got some of those answers, but
I guess we could say as part of our thing that in the dam removal scenario, we feel it's important to have access to the channel from Commonwealth Ave, from Giroux, and from Scout Island. Pick other
Absolutely.
places if I'm
Right.
if I'm misremembering it. And so we need to have a contingency line or something in the project to adjust if needed
right.
where the channel settles.
So that would be dredging slightly lower than the natural low points,
Yeah,
right?
to encourage that
Mhm.
that course.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, Liz, your internet's no good anywhere you've been so far.
I know, I'm moving back to the house.
You can see.
So my,
Just-
we have a shed.
Can you just walk over to my house? Just keep walking, turn left and.
No, we have a shed in our backyard, and like we use a Wi-Fi booster,
Yeah,
so that she can work out there. And I don't know if it's like just my computer sucks and doesn't like it, or I'm gonna go try it inside the house.
well, that's the best spot you've been so far though, right now.
It is. Yeah.
I'm in the basement well.
So far, that's the best picture we've had of you.
Can't let Liz get Triple E.
Don't move. Yeah, that's true. Do not get.
You know, I go out there so like the kids don't come running out and.
So a question that was brought up, I opened up the comments, a question that's come up that we should be able to answer is impacts to wildlife of our scheme.
Yeah,
You know,
and
non-fish.
that's important, and that sort of gets back to that natural communities thing. Like, what do we have
Yeah, I see.
currently, and what, given
I see.
these conditions that will evolve, would we
Okay.
expect to utilize?
So it's not just flora, it's
Right.
also fauna. Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Completely agree with that as a need.
And then the other one, I think, Malcolm, you've had quite a few times is what happens to mosquitoes and disease. You had said something about diseases. So I don't remember how you said it, but there was something that you said.
Yeah, I I have a memory like a sieve, so I have no recollection of what I said, but I think it's just a general, are there unforeseen negative public health impacts? I mean, obviously there's all sorts of negative impacts we might see there that are unforeseen, but can we anticipate them? And you know, we pick on the mosquitoes because it's water and mosquitoes breed
Right.
in water, but there are other things, and it's particularly relevant to us all right now when, you know, we have, I won't exactly say a triple E epidemic, but we do have cases of triple E, and all of a sudden people get very concerned. And, you know, there's also West Nile. And we do need to be able to answer the question of, are we creating extra mosquito habitat? And if we are, what are we going to do to minimize that? I think that's important. There are other organisms that can cause you know problems where we're probably not going to get my mind's blanked on the bird tapeworm that yeah, I mean, I think we're much too warm for that, so I'll shut up.
Okay, that's a good one.
I mean, would bacteria and algae improve with this scheme? I don't know, because we do have a lot of algae this year. Is that something that will go away, or will it be in the wetlands? I don't know. You know, are there other bacteria and algae ramifications? It might be better.
They should theoretically improve because
Mhm.
they don't like running water as much as they like still or slow water. But again, somebody who actually knows this stuff would be able to answer that quite quickly, I'm sure. I know I used to do some measuring of algae and things with oars a number of years ago, and whoever I was working with, Sue Flint, knew this stuff incredibly well. So somebody like that could answer. I know she's not with oars anymore.
Right.
Right now I'm done. Now I've depleted my brain. Questions.
So if we were to present at the next meeting, or give kind of a soft status report, how would we want to go about that? Vicky put together that really nice map we could speak to. We could adjust that in some fashion. I'd be happy to co-present with anybody or cede the floor to anybody else.
Yeah, I can't guarantee I'm going to be at the meeting because for some reason the meeting didn't appear in my emails or in my calendar, and I will be on a plane. I was just looking at it. I arrive in Charlotte at 2:45 and I leave Charlotte at 7:15, arriving in Boston at 7:27. So that's about as inconvenient as is possible. So I will do my best to, when I can, tune in by phone, but I don't think you should rely on me to present anything.
Well, should we do like Sven, you do the remove the dam, don't do anything. It's, except for like one or two things that we had on there, we would do the boat launch.
Oh my goodness.
And then Jeff, you could do one of them and I could do one, or Liz, you could do one. And then we each take one of the schemes and do the pros and cons that we came up with for each one.
So we could have someone else that we summarize with the open questions we've come up with.
And then one person summarize the questions. Yeah.
That makes sense.
What do you think?
Yeah, let me just double check here. When Malcolm started talking about travel, I got it.
So it's next week, right? We're meeting 2
Yeah,
weeks?
the 13th.
Week from Tuesday.
13th, so 2 weeks.
Yeah.
13th?
No, it's the 10th.
The
10th,
10th.
sorry. 13th is something else.
Oh
Sorry.
my God.
We're in person, we're meeting on the 13th.
We're meeting in person on the 10th.
Sorry.
I'm leaving on the 11th.
Okay,
So
so what about if we go Sven, the first one, Jeff, you do the second one, I'll do the third one, Liz, you do the questions, or
I think
do
that-
we-
vice versa, everybody
well,
just pick
I
one.
just want to make sure we all understand what the first, the second, and the third.
Because well, yeah. What do you have in mind for that, Vicky? The one was 30% design. We make that 100%. We take out the dam and dust the hands.
No, I think we added in there, I think at the last time we met, we added putting the boat launch in no matter what. So it's like, yes, finish the 30% design, let
But
the channel
expanding
do
the
what it
boat
wants to do, no dredging, it'll find its path, whether it's between the islands or near Giroux or not. And we put in the boat launch to meet it wherever it is, and we go home.
I think we also said that the access to Scout Island is an absolute.
But wouldn't it be from the creek? So if you get from the boat launch to the creek, then you would get from the creek to Scout Island.
Well, it depends on how far the
Around the
creek is
creek.
from
Yeah.
Scout Island and
Sure.
whether there needs to be
Okay,
a dock built or
Two
yeah.
boat launches, right? That's-
Yeah.
So two boat launches
Okay, that's
and
scenario one.
remove the dam. That's scenario one.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, did we get rid of scenario two?
I thought we got rid of scenario
I
2.
think you're right. All right, Jeff, scenario two is do the whole thing.
And then, well, I'd like to. So I think that the idea of like the hybrid with some supplementary dredging. I mean, there's channel formation encouragement, maybe, or adjustments. I think that that's something we might expect in a scenario two, but a scenario three of enlarging the deep hole or kind of
Yep.
expanding the depth to meet a potential beach location. That seems like a different supplement to me to the
Okay,
scenario two that we came up with last time of, you know, trails, a nice wildlife viewing platform, you know, the invasives, the commitment to invasives management and other recreational.
all right, you win. Scenario two is yours.
Okay.
So is the scenario two now with limited or without the limited dredging?
What do you
Channel encouragement is what I heard, which I love that.
Yeah.
Terminology.
Okay.
So that the channel doesn't end up being 200 feet away from Giroux and the boat launch, you know.
And then do we want to present the hybrid scenario? Hybrid one, I mean, like with some more real capital D dredging.
Well, I think that's what will come up. What I would recommend is, because we don't overwhelm with schemes. We just say, here's 1, 2, and 3. We can mix and match any of this at the end of the day. Like this fits into 3 nice little buckets. But we're here to say, what do you guys think? Like, do we have 3 schemes? Is there a hybrid scheme that's none of these schemes and we only present one? Like, what does the task force feel is the next right step?
Because really there's 2 different things we're thinking along. We're thinking along like level of recreation, I guess, opportunities. And we're also as one axis, and the other axis is like level of engineering of what happens.
Yeah.
And so we've decided like, here are the 3 points that we're looking at on these 2 things. But like, is there another point that you think, like, should we be looking at high levels of recreation and low levels of engineering? Not something we're doing right now. Or, I mean, you wouldn't really look at high levels of engineering and low levels of recreation, but you know.
Folks, I have one more item for our list of questions, and that is the costs for each of these amenities that we're thinking of. And we can do some homework. I can look at some past projects, but in the town, hopefully can look at some improvements they've done in other places.
Yeah, we did talk about, Jeff, that after we do the next couple of steps that all of the subgroups are going to need cost estimating.
Okay,
That we can't propose something to the NRC in December or January or March, whenever it is, without a cost associated with it. So at the end of the day, if the task force says we'd like to propose these two schemes, one is dredging and one is dam removal and one is no action, whatever, the cost of each one of these is X, Y, and Z,
yeah,
right?
Mhm.
So there will be a cost estimate before we go back, before we finish our job, I guess.
Yeah, cost and source of funding.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
something that we might want to start looking at, on our own is, potential external sources of funding.
Mm.
I would
That's a
think
very
that
good point.
Delia would have some idea.
Yeah, I think Delia has some
Yeah.
very concrete ideas and where it
This-
comes.
Yeah,
If you look, it's like there was this, I don't forgot the name of the dam Acton took down. It was a 1.2 million project,
Talbot.
but the state of Massachusetts gave 1.1 million for that. So
Mhm.
that has for the town a different impact than paying everything alone.
I
Yeah.
think one of the questions that I remember having, when we were talking, you remember when we were doing like like, what are your questions that you have from the alternatives analysis? Like, I think one of the things that we might, I don't know if there's a way for us to take a look at it, but like how likely we feel like we are to get some of these sources of funding, right? Like, are they more likely to go to projects that are in like dire need of help? So yeah, we're not gonna get this source of funding, like maybe we can gut check some of this stuff. So maybe if we get a list from Delia and kind of.
And timeline is, are you getting this funding, whatever, in 2 years or in 10 years?
I
Mhm.
think it's important for us to know, because I think one of the real draws of dam removal is because there are so many external sources of funding that we should be able to speak to like how confident we feel, like,
Yeah.
or not, maybe we're not the ones making the assessments, but like, hey, let's present the information about, right, like these are the things we need to think about whether or not we can get this funding or.
Right. Yeah. And there is a lot of funding out there. I know there's, I think somebody said there's $5 billion in the infrastructure thing that Congress passed for dam removal
Private
alone.
sources of funding, like I know Patagonia, like you remember when they became like a nonprofit, like one of their big things is dam removals. Like, so I assume there's probably also a lot of private
Yeah.
sources.
Yeah, but I think even Joe said probably the priorities would go to failing dams.
Yeah.
He has a list of dams that are over 100 years old that are about to go, and he said probably if there's money, they're gonna try to like over to ones that are about to fail and flood the downstream downtowns
Yeah,
and things
so I
like
think
that.
that's why it's a good idea for us to have like this sort of sense
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
one benefit to our situation is the wild and scenic river designation.
Yeah.
So removing the dam would connect this to a wild and scenic
Okay.
portion of the Assabet Concord Sudbury, which is a national designation.
Yeah. And I was at I don't think it was being run by the state, but there were state representatives there, and they were they were commenting on the fact that we're currently counting dam removals in the state by how many a year are we removing, and in order to address the needs in the state, we need to be looking at that current yearly number being per week in the state. So there is a lot of enthusiasm within the state for funding and moving on these, not just for the emergencies.
Great. All right, so so I could send the email to Toby. I can also send the sort of the Vicky, to go back to what you asked earlier, what are the next steps? So I can also send that email to Delia, kind of giving her the what kind of expert do you think we should be looking into for this information around
Well, I think it goes to Toby, right?
Toby.
Yeah, because he's compiling it all from all the different subgroups.
Yeah. About the kind of I don't know what to call this group of questions as a shorthand, like the future appearance of the creek, modeling the future appearance. So there's that set of questions, and then talking to someone about the invasives and management of that, like who would be someone that we can talk to about that. And then, so to Toby on those, and I guess to Delia to see if she has this list of funding sources that we can kind of dig into and start looking at.
Or do they just do it? Does NRC do that and provide a report? Like, these are the funding sources. This is what they've said to Concord. We've already been talking to them for 5 years. You know, we've talked to them when we were doing dredging. We talked to them about this dam removal project. Here's what they've said.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
I
makes
think they probably got 80% of the information that we're looking for already.
yeah. So like, yeah, what's the information they have on funding?
yep.
Okay.
What have they heard so far? Yeah.
Yeah. There was another basket of questions. Oh, the fish, but we think that is going to be, we know what the questions are that we want answered when the fish passage.
Yep.
Fisheries person comes, whenever that is.
Okay, I think we've now hashed
Everything.
Great. All right, what's next on our agenda?
Vicky, in terms of those presentations, sorry, could I ask you, have you shared or could you share the slides that you came up
Yes.
with for our
Did I
last-
not share them? I thought I
You
did.
may have. I just looked. at
Okay,
my-
I will
my-
reshare. Yep.
that might have got done.
So that was sort of the potential speakers section of the agenda. So next on the agenda is just open comment. If there is anyone who'd like to comment, we ask that you keep it to 2 minutes, respectful.
Is it public comment or open issues with us?
Public comment? Sorry, but I
Okay, so-
let me make sure all of our open
Yeah,
issues.
yeah, so
Group, do we have all our open issues?
we had our open issues. So one issue that we need to resolve as a task force is in going back and reading, because I've been looking for all these bathymetry maps and things, is that there looks like there's an issue with the number that EA used for the level of the pond. So in this dam removal, 30% is 118.8. It's come up over and over again. It's 118.8, 118.8. We keep hearing the 118.8. And then you go back into the analysis and they use 116.5 for the level of the pond. And that's how they came up with their dredging amount, which if you added 2 feet to that, you would have to do 2 feet less of dredging. Which is what I think Dan Stapleton in his comment to us is what he's getting at, even though that was so convoluted, I had to go back and look at the report. If that's the case, we have a very, very different number for how much we have to dredge in any of our scenarios. Even the one that we're talking about for the dam removal one.
Okay.
Certainly in the thing that Delia sent us this week, they're using 119.
Exactly, the 118.8 is where that's coming from. But if you go back to their analysis where they come up with a 35,000 cubic yards of dredged material in order to get the levels down to 5 feet below the water level, they started at 116.5. Well, if you go start at 116.5, that's very different than starting at 118.8 to reach the depth.
Definitely.
We need clarification on that.
Yeah, but that's the water level for where the water level now is.
Well,
Not
that's
the-
but we're using that for every calculation. We just need to be consistent with the calculation.
I'm not using the 119. We need to know what our water level is after the dam is removed. That's different than the 119. The 119 is the entry point,
Yes,
and then you have an outflow. So somewhere in between is our water level.
it's 115 is what they're predicting when we remove the dam is
Yeah,
115.
so that's where.
No, I'm just saying for the task force itself, there seems to be a contradiction right now in.
So that might be a good question to ask, have the planning committee talk to EA, like clarify with EA. I
Yeah.
think that's probably the
Yeah,
right.
yeah, perfect. Thank you. That was just an open issue.
Yeah, so I can add that to my list of things from,
'Cause at the end of the day, we're all still part of the bigger
Yeah,
task force. We're
yeah.
not just focused on our one thing.
yeah, so I can, I just don't want to forget that, so let me write these down.
Thank you, thank you. Because when Dan put that in, I was like, wait, I don't understand what he's saying. There's a lot of terminology in his comment, but I went back to the report and I see where he came from.
Okay. All right, I wrote myself a note about that, okay.
Because we keep talking about 35,000 cubic yards, 100,000 cubic yards, but maybe it's 20,000 cubic yards and 50,000 cubic yards. Like you'd have to recalculate that if you went at 1.18.8.
Okay. Is that all of our open stuff?
Yes, sorry, Carlin. I know
Alright,
you
yeah.
had your hand up.
Yes. Carlin, do you want to kick us off with some comment or public comment?
Sure, thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 Woods End, member of the Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf, I really enjoy listening to you folks talk about this particular issue. I also appreciate the consideration of the cost and the source of funding, because as we go into the capital planning process, which is coming up in October, November, those are two questions that are tied inextricably. All right, how much money do you want and where do you think that we're going to get it? Where does the money come from? So thanks for including that. It's not the main point, but it will be one of many important points in your discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlin. Any other public comment?
Wow, see, it's no problem having 2 points of public comment because
That's
we
I
only
do,
get
I
one
do
comment.
like that. It is nice to have that kind of, if there's anything we need to be keeping in our mind, or I
Yeah.
think that's great, a nice way to do it. All right, so then it's 7:45 and I am adjourning our, oh, no, I'm not yet, because we had to
No.
figure out who's scribing and who's leading and when our next.
No, I don't think we have to for the next one until we have the big task force meeting, right? And we do
Oh,
a,
yeah, that's just
we
can talk
would do
about
our breakout. During our breakout, we'll have to do that.
that. Okay,
But you can't adjourn the meeting, can you? I think we have to.
no, the chair just adjourns.
The chair
Oh,
can
adjourn.
adjourn
7:45, we're adjourned.
it.
Thank you, Liz.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you, Liz.
Thank you
Very
all.
nicely
you.
done.